Robert, how are you?
Very well now, Chris, yourself?
Good, good. Robert, thanks. You were with us last week when we had the webinar on continuous cover forestry, and we had questions coming in. We've had a series of questions, Robert, ongoing throughout the Forestry Solutions series. So thanks very much for coming on, and we'll go through some of the questions. Some are quite specific, Robert.
Yeah,
Others are a bit more general. So
I hope I'll be able to answer them all for you anyway to start with,
absolutely.
Chris.
Yeah, it's not mastermind, so you're all right. Robert, under felling license requirements, Japanese larch and ash were specified in reforestation plans. What species are considered equivalent to comply with licenses?
So for Japanese larch, probably hasn't been on it kind of for the nurseries haven't been growing it for quite a number of years, probably 8 or 10 years at this stage. And it'd be unusual for people to put in Japanese larch on licenses now. Probably Douglas fir, Norway spruce. You probably won't get the same aesthetics kind of looks off it like Japanese larch in the winter and time. But yeah, probably the equivalent kind of timber wise would be Scots pine, Douglas fir kind of stuff, and you get good, there's a good market there for fence posts and that kind of stuff for that kind of timber. In regards to ash, any of the native broadleaves, oak usually will grow away on any ground that would grow ash. So I'd favour that.
Okay, okay, good stuff. And this is one, if you can answer this, Robert, you may set up your own consultancy.
Is there a
During
prize even?
during reforestation, if a site is prone to damage by deer and hare, is there any species that are less likely to be eaten by browsers?
Yeah, alder would be less susceptible to browsers, but usually, well, what you do is either one on the this is for reforestation. It is.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, is that in your license maybe that you'd put in that you're going to use tree shelters, but maybe instead of planting 2,500 trees per hectare or 3,000 trees per hectare, that you might reduce the stocking and put them at wider space and put instead what money you save on labor and trees, then you can actually put into putting in deer tubes. So that you're spending your money, and then the trees have extra protection. They also have a little microclimate, so their actual survival rate is better. And also because of the microclimate, then your tree grows up through the tube faster, so your tree establishes faster. But there is an extra bit of maintenance, one to keep the tree upright, and then once the tree emerges, then to eventually release it from that deer tube and also dispose of that deer tube environmentally at a proper waste disposal facility. So they'd be the different options, but also if you were to pick a different species, then in the broadleaves, alder probably would be an option, and it's fast growing then too. Or alternatively, then, if there's deer pressure in the area, maybe go for a species that would not be susceptible to browsing, like Sitka spruce, Norway spruce, the Douglas fir and stuff like that. The deer do like them. So it's like leaving out Mars bars sometimes. If there's plenty of deer around, they'll go for them. They'll be mad for them.
And of course, the thing with the tree shelters is they're more likely to catch the wind. That's why you have to keep an eye on them and make sure that they're staked properly.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
wind
Yeah.
doesn't blow it over. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, good stuff. Under a shade tolerant species, Robert, that could be planted under sycamore, and maybe after ash has been cleared from a site. There are sites where you have sycamore and ash, so
Yeah.
sycamore spreads a heavy shade. So some shade tolerant species that might work there.
What would probably work there would be Western red cedar and also a beech probably in the broadleaves. There'd be two that I would favor, and I've used them in the past there where, say, we had the storm damage recon, and I can remember a site there in Wicklow that some of the larch and Scots pine had blown on alternative lines that were planted with oak. And the oak, some of it flopped over and that kind of stuff, but most of it stood still. But the site got the full recon, and what they done was they underplanted places with beech and Western red cedar, and there was a good strike rate. And even though there was intensive deer pressure in the place, they did browse some of the beech, but the Western red cedar got away, and that'll come up, and it'll be a secondary crop then through the oak then eventually.
Yeah. And good markets for both those as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Western red cedar be quite favorable for like decking, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So you've something coming along then afterwards with your oak as your final crop, but you also
Yeah.
have something an alternative to it, and it's a bit of hedging your bets too, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Robert, on a question about native woodland conservation scheme after clearfell, what type of sites are sorry? What types of sites are suitable for the native woodland conservation scheme after clearfell? So if a
Yeah.
site has been clearfelled,
So, kind of soils wise, mineral soil will be best. Keep off the peats and that, and also then under, I think it's 180 meters in the east coast, and then 150 meters on the west coast. Um, They'd be the kind of main constrictions, but also then it has to meet scheme eligibility criteria. So the different criteria set out in the scheme has to be met. So like it'd have to be hydrologically connected to an SAC, stuff like that. But it's all in the scheme document. And if someone was interested in, they'd finished their conifer crop, and then they were thinking of going with a native woodland conservation afterwards, that, contact the registered forester, someone who has past experience of doing native woodland conservations, discuss it with them, or Teagasc. And if they've any further questions, you can contact your local inspector too if you're worried about the eligibility of it.
I guess the thing is, Robert, isn't it, that the forestry inspectors, you're there to help people. You're not there to catch
Yeah.
people out.
Oh, yeah,
It,
no, because I always remember I knew a lady who worked in the tax office, and she said to me, "We're here to help you pay your taxes and have things right, and if you're owed money, we'll get it back to you," and that kind of stuff. Same
yeah,
with the inspectors here. We're here to help people with their applications, have them correct. If they have any questions, because you want people to want to apply for the right scheme and what suits their forest and what suits them, their objectives too.
yes.
So we're here to help.
Yeah, of course. I think it's that thing that maybe goes back to in school when the inspector was coming around and it put
The
everyone on edge.
Kigger.
The Kigger, that's it. Yeah, maybe you need to come up with a new name.
Oh,
We'll get on with the questions. Some examples of compatible mixes. This is a bit technical now, Robert. Can you
all
give
right.
examples of transgressive over yielding in mixed plantations, assuming optimum site conditions?
Transgressive.
Over yielding in mixed plantations.
God Almighty, that's complicated. I don't exactly know what the question is. If it's over yielding, I presume it's like mixtures with, say, were previously oak had been mixed with Japanese larch and Scots pine, and a Scots pine and Japanese larch or larch were outcompeting the oak.
Yeah.
They were given it quite a lot of shelter and helped drag it up a bit, but they were out competing it. And we do the Woodland Improvement Scheme, and we've two tranches of that to give support to forest owners so that they can tin out the larch and the Scots and improve the actual quality oaks, so remove poor quality oak trees and pick out your potential final crop trees. So we do have schemes. I presume that's what the question is asking. But also kind of silviculture will help the oak, and it'll also give an alternative income to the forest owners, so they're not just waiting on, say, the oak to mature sometime, or even get a decent firewood crop from the oak as you progress.
As you thin it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any nurse species, Robert, that go in that can be retained that won't end up dominating the crop species?
Well, you see, you've all sorts of mixtures, like, you've broadleaf conifer mixtures, you've broadleaf and broadleaf mixtures, and then conifer and conifer. So a lot of these, like, say, the conifer ones are compatible. Like before, say if you had a crop in check with, say, a spruce crop in check, and if you added, say, some lodgepole pine, they had a bit of a reaction in the soil, and you get a bit of nutrient fixing, a bit of nitrogen fixing, and the lodgepole pine helped bring on the spruce and bring it up. And you could see it in different crops. I used to work in research and development down in Cork years ago, and I remember lots of these different experiments that you'd actually see the reaction there. But also you've like there was other experiments that we worked on that were, say, Japanese larch, and they'd look at the difference in height between Japanese larch mixed with Sitka spruce, or Japanese larch, Douglas fir, and Sitka spruce. They're all compatible species that grow with each other in a mixture. And also kind of you're adding resilience into your forest then, for climate, pests and diseases. If you do have a good mixture of species in your crop, and stuff like CCF, if people are going into that you can actually add an underplant to give support for people to add an underplant there. Say if you have a current Sitka spruce crop, that you can add different species to it, and you're adding to the resilience and stuff like that to your crop then too.
Okay. Robert, we're against the clock, but just on that, under continuous, quite a few questions about continuous cover forestry. Species that can sustain an understory within a Sitka spruce plantation.
Most, because you're only looking for like small areas to come on. You're not looking for a big blanket across your site. You'll have the compatible species. So you'll have seed from your seed trees there already, and then you bring in stuff. So Western red cedar, Western hemlock, they'll fit straight in straight away, and also mix through with then some Douglas fir, your alternative conifer species, but also birch, oak. You just bring in a mix of stuff, and then your site. So certain things, your site will lend itself to certain trees, and certain trees will come in as invasives, like birch and that kind of stuff, and they're most suited to your site. And you grow them on, and try pick out your winner trees, your best quality trees, and grow them on, and thin the rest of them out, and eventually, over quite a period of time, diversify your species structure of your crop.
Yeah, and getting in those different ones, that naturally then helps with the biodiversity. Once you bring in those other species that do well and compete, the more that, as that mosaic increases, then that also adds towards the biodiversity.
It does. It gives more opportunities to different insects, birds. The more the mosaic kind of works, but also brings in an understory of different plants, ferns, mosses, which bring in more insects, plants, birds. And because then you've got a continuous forest, you've got that continuous. You haven't got, when you clear fell it, then that's just gone, and all them species have to move out, or they're left with no home. Whereas if you've held onto your crop and you're just intermittently thinning it here and there, it's kind of in a nice equilibrium, and everyone's happy in there, living in there.
Yeah, Robert, we lost you there just slightly at the end, but listen, okay. Thanks a million for coming in and answering the questions. The Forestry Solution Series has a few more weeks left. It's been getting great traction, so thanks a million. Great to have you on board for that, Robert.
Not to worry, Chris, and thanks very much for the opportunity to